upper back and opening up the upper back and spine so that we can really control and focus just on the upper back. What I want you to do is just clasp the hands together, and just for feedback as well, even if I'm just like pointing my fingers, my index fingers, like they're together and making like a gun kind of shape, I guess you could say, like a pistol. It's going to allow me to have a little bit more awareness and tension through the arms and focus as I move into flexion. So what we're going to do first, let's talk about the upper body. So you're going to actually push your knees over your toes a little bit and then tuck the tail. And what you'll notice is when you do that, you'll be able to go into a posterior tilt even further. So the emphasis can be even deeper on flexion through the upper back. So you're going to make your pistol. You're going to point down towards the floor, and we're going to move from the head first, and then the upper back, and we're going to really reach down. You can actually see what I'm doing. I'm not moving much. As far down as we can, and it's just through the upper back, and then we're going to come back up. Let's do that 10 times. So head, shoulders, reach the arms down, breathing out, breathing in as I go back up. Head, shoulders, check in with the pelvic position, make sure that you're still tucked underneath. Knees are still slightly bent over the toes, and come back up. Head, shoulders, reaching down. So it's almost like just focusing on the top portion of that Jefferson curl spinal segmentation.
Yeah, think about curling the chin down, start with the neck, and then create as much space between your shoulder blades as you possibly can. So you should get a good stretch in the upper back through the whole traps.
Yes, you see my chin is tucked right now. I'm going to come up, keeping my chin tucked, and then finish with the head, and then start with the head. Coming back up. So really clasp those hands together and really reach and point towards the floor. Exhale, point, 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 point. A little further. And back up. Let's do 2 more. And I do have like my little clubs here and my little dumbbell. And these weights are actually really great for this exercise as well too, right? So then I just have that extra little bit of assistance. So just pulling me a little bit deeper. One more. We're actually going to hold this last one for a 30 count. So if anyone's new in the class, we usually just expect someone to start counting for 30 seconds and take the lead. So we'll just wait until that person says that we're good. Haha, I'm funny. Well, I'm counting in my head right now. It's a good way to do it as well too.
So guys, 30 seconds is about 10 big, deep breaths. So if you are having a hard time timing your sets when you're stretching, 10 deep breaths is about 30 seconds. So you can kind of count from there as well if you want to use breaths instead of time.
And we come out of it the same way we went into it, right? The same way we finish. Good. So we just shake that off a little bit. And we're actually going to go back into that drill now, but we're going to add a twist to it. So I'll stand more front on so you can see what we're doing here. So the same expectation in the reach, but we're going to stay down in that flexed upper back position, and we're going to twist side to side 5 times on each side. So just shake it off a little bit, and it's even a good one because we just did so much flexion work to just open up into extension, just open the chest up a little bit. Keep the breathing nice and steady. And now same thing, so we're going to move into a bent knee, tuck the tail. Okay, keep that position nice and strong, and we're going to go down into that flexed spine position. And in this position, we're going to go side to side. So I'm going to basically make like a horseshoe all the way to one side as much as I can, all the way back to the other side. And I'm not trying to shift my hips or knees, so this is probably a good honest position for me so you guys can make sure that I'm not, see my knees and stuff shifting over to the side, so it's just through the upper back. So you're really grabbing the floor with your toes, staying steady, and stay in that pelvic tilt position. Keep reaching, the index fingers pointed towards the floor. And we have one more, pelvic tilt. Back to center, and we're gonna come back up nice and slow. So for our next drill, we're gonna work a little bit more on that rotation. I'm just taking my socks off because I'm on the carpet, it's a little slippy. I don't want to be slipping around too much. And this drill is called Around the World. So what we're going to do is take more of a staggered stance, opened up, not a straddle stance, it's kind of half straddle. It's not too wide here, but it's enough that it's going to create a strong base for me to move around. And we're basically going to be folding forward and then twisting and moving around through full upward extension of the upper body and torso. So from the front, I'm using my yoga block here for feedback. So what this will do for me is it'll just ensure that as I move into rotation and extension and flexion, I'm not going to be like all over the place with my arms. So what we do is we keep the arms stay straight, and I'm actually just squishing the block. So as I do these movements through the torso and spine, I can focus more on that, knowing that my arms are really locked in place. So my toes are facing forward and I'm folding and curling down almost like, again, it's like a straddled Jefferson curl, I guess you could say, or standing pancake. And when I get to just hovering over the ground, what I'm actually going to do is turn so that my hands and my torso, my head is facing to the side. And then I'm going to flex up as high as I can, twisting at the top. So I twist at the top and then I come down to the other side. And then we're going to go back to center and then do the other side. So reaching around the other side now, flex extending upward, twisting at the top, coming back down, moving to center. So that was 1 rep. Let's try to do 5. So going to the other side, reaching up as high as we can. And again, with those arms, reach up. Like you're trying to shrug the shoulders at the top, back down, curling the spine, back to center, other side. Reach, 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 reach. High, 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 twist at the top. Back down, nice control, coming back to center. That was 2 reps. Up, reach, 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 reach. Twisting at the top, curling down, back to center. Reach all the way up, shrug the shoulders, find that midpoint, then twist, come back down. Center, big breath in, exhale coming up, reach, 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 twist, breath in coming down. Back to the other side, all the way up, twist, find that midline before you twist, come back down. And 1 more rep. So to the side, reach, 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 reach. High as you can, twisting at the top. Down, back to center, and we're going to the other side. And come back out of that position. Good job, guys. So we're shaking that off a little bit. Shoulders back, and we're going to be moving into some lateral flexion now. That's going to be from the same position we were just in. And what we'll do in that position is we'll focus on just playing around and experimenting with how we're feeling. So just to walk you through what that feels and looks like. First of all, find your lateral flexion by reaching up overhead. So I'm going to go to the left first. And then reaching and finding as much of a stretch as we can on that side that we're reaching away from. And what I can do here is I can actually use this hand to play around a little bit with what I'm feeling and experiencing here. So it's almost like that QL stretch when we're seated on the floor, but in standing. So I can reach across and come back, reach down and come back. And then come out. So hopefully that kind of made sense, right? Like when I come down into my lateral flex, I'm then using my other arm to just experiment, similar to how we did with that upper back stretch, where I was like, had the pistol fingers and they were kind of moving around. So find that lateral flex. Try to keep legs relatively straight. You can bend them a bit if you have to. And then we're going to explore. So I'm reaching across, down, a little further. And come out. Good. So we're going to move to the floor now. And what I wanted to do before we got into some nice range work on the floor is just work a little bit on trunk strength. So again, our core trunk strength positions on the floor, very traditional, like gymnastic style positions, our hollow body, our arch body, our side body positions. So, you know, not only do we want to, especially when it comes to spine work, so there's always that discussion back and forth with spine work, like, should we be working just like stability work, rotation work, and then it's just like open concept theory. But I think I like a combination of all of it. So this is kind of just like working on the stability of the trunk first, before we get into stretching and going a little deeper into some of these rotation drills. So let's review the hollow body first. And particularly, I don't want you to focus on like making this crazy difficult, but you can if you want. It's more about applying those pelvic tilt positions, that posterior tilt position that we had when we were standing, to the floor. So we'll just start very regressively with our tuck. Can you see me? Everything. And we're just going to find that tuck hollow body position. So to create that strong hollow body position, we want to squeeze the glutes and flex our trunk. So our abs, everything is nice and flat here. And then first we're going to explore straightening the legs. So in that straightening that leg and that extension there, I don't lose that pelvic tilt. Okay, and back, and other side, straightening. Shoulders are flexed. I can actually reach my hands down to have more of a flexed upper back. So it's like I'm reaching my fingers towards my feet. And we'll try both legs. So it just increases that resistance. And back in. And then if you want to, on these last couple, we're going to reach, extend the legs, and then reach overhead. So in that, nothing changes in my torso, right? So I'm very posterior tilted, flexed through the spine, and back. And we'll just do 50 reps. That's good, guys. Yeah, so we're gonna roll out of that and we'll go into the arch body. So arch body position, classically also called Superman, but I do like calling it arch body because I think it accentuates that we're trying to find as much extension as possible. Or sometimes people will try to avoid that. Don't hyperextend, but I want you to really build up as much arch and extension as you can through the trunk, upper back, torso, and legs. So coming down the floor, and I'm not very picky about keeping them together here because everyone's like positioning and torso position, everything is a bit different, so it might be awkward to have your feet together if you got, you know, some different positionings going on there. So let's work on the legs first. So I want you to try, now a good way to visualize this with a straight leg is to try to lift your quads away from the floor. Okay, so I'm actually thinking about how much more can I get my quads off of the floor. And in doing that, I can really feel my lower back and my glutes fire even harder to try to lift those quads off the floor. Okay, so we're just gonna start with that as a static hold and just focus on a lower body extension first. So I want you to hold, find as much knee extension as you can comfortably. It's all right if your knees are bent a little bit, but I really want you to focus on lifting the quads, so the front of your thighs, off of the floor as much as possible. Using a mat if you need to, and then come down. So now what we're going to do is focus on the upper torso. We're going to keep the legs flat here. And again, so arms don't have to be super close together here. They can be like in a comfortable position, like one of a Y. And the objective here now is to lift the chest off the floor as much as possible. So I'm going to go with arms and head, and I'm trying to get my chest off of the floor. And my head is reaching up, 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 up. And my arms are reaching higher and higher. And my legs are probably contracted a little bit, but I'm not focusing on that. And then come down. So what we're going to do is move to side body, and then after the side body, we'll come back to arch, and we'll do a full body arch. So now you know the expectation is that it's chest and thigh, and now we've had a chance to recoup a little bit with side body, I guess, in a way, and we'll come back to arch. So side body, holding, static hold. So what we're looking to do here is we're trying to get, think about your hollow body position on the floor. So I don't necessarily want my heels under my hips and my hand aligned with my, I want to actually think about that hollow body pelvic tilt position. Okay, so the ribs are pulled down, pelvic tilted, tucking the tail. So if my feet are a little bit in front of me, that's okay. And if my arm is a little bit in front of me, that's probably better too. From here, I'm taking my free hand, and I'm actually going to push it hard into the ground and then lift as if I'm going into that lateral flexion. So my feet and my arm lift. And if you want to take the arm out of the equation, because it's a little too difficult, you can do that. And even if you want to bend the knees, really the focus is on the obliques here and finding as much lateral flex as we can. But the most difficult would be arms and legs straight. And this one here, I'm not necessarily trying to tweak my neck and arch my neck laterally. I'm just trying to keep it in a comfortable position so I can focus on the obliques. And then come down. And then we'll just roll the other side and do the same thing. So it's very patient practice today, right? Like we are doing some core stability work as we move the spine around a lot. But this kind of session is very focused, okay? It's more about ensuring that we are engaged with the movement. I'm not trying to go P90X here on my core. I'm just trying to have the best intent possible as I move into greater range positions for my spine. So arm, straight, leg. So remember, I'm using that hand to press. So without that hand, it's going to be quite difficult. I probably could, right? But I'm losing stability and I'm losing technique. So I just use that hand to stabilize and also help me achieve more flexion here. And you could go half arm, half leg if you want. And rest. Good job. Building up a little bit of a sweat here now. So now we're going to, before we get into some of our deeper stretches today, we're going to go back to that arch body position. And I want you to go max here. So And when I say max, it's going to be a ramping max. So start light, use the cues that we used when we did it a minute ago. So that's quads and chests coming up off the ground, and slowly ramp into the biggest arch you can find. And we're just going to see how we do. Big thing here is breathing. So I want you to make sure you maintain your breath. And when you're ready, we're on our stomachs. Legs apart, fine. Arms in a Y, fine. I really want you to focus on chest and quads coming up. So slowly ramp that up. And go higher and higher. Higher and higher. And slowly back down. Good job. So now we've really engaged the trunk and torso region, and now we're going to focus on stretching a lot of that out. So first we're going to start with seated hip twist. So pretty basic stretch in that you've probably seen this before. So I want to find comfortable seated position, leg straight, and we're going to be bending one knee and crossing that leg over. Now finding the stretch for where you're at, find the position that you feel the stretch the most, but it should be comfortable at the start. So I shouldn't go in my max here. I'm going to start a time, knowing that I am going to be able to move deeper into the stretch. But what we're looking to do here is to slowly move into a rotation and a twisting movement. And notice that it's away from the bent knee. So I'm not moving and twisting to the direction that it's going. I'm twisting away from it. Okay. So this is going to open up the piriformis and the glutes, as well as the lower back. But I want to slowly get into it having more of an effect on my upper back. So how I'm going to do that is I'm going to pull the knee in, and then I want to almost think about twisting this arm back. I don't have to have my arm straight, but it does help as a guide to find a little bit more range through your upper back, holding that position. So within this stretch, we'll do a couple contractions. So make sure you're still in a position that feels like it's comfortable, and the contraction is away from the stretch. So how we're going to do that is take a deep breath in, and I'm going to push this bent knee into my forearm. And do that for about 10 seconds. And then I'm going to relax, pull a little further into the stretch, and twist just a little bit more. We're only holding that for about 10 seconds, and we're going to do one more. So we're going to take a deep breath in, push the knee against the forearm or the elbow, push, 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 and then relax, pull a little harder into the stretch, twist a tad bit further, and hold that for 10. And then we're slowly going to come out of that stretch. So we're straightening the leg, shaking out the legs a little bit, and then we're doing the other side. So I'm going to go into that bent knee position again. I'm going to cross over and just hold to comfort first. So I should feel like I'm stretched. So that comfort kind of starting point is a stretch position, but I'm not overly stretched yet. I'm just letting myself sink into that position. What I'm also thinking about doing here with my upper torso is pull my ribs up. So I want a very proud chest. I want to move into as much extension as possible to the upper body. So really, really firm setting posture. And we're just holding comfortably for about a minute. Maintain your breath. Focus on deep diaphragmatic breathing. How's my voice sound? Is it pretty clear, Jeff?
Yeah, you're good.
All right, good. So we'll do that first contraction. So we're gonna push that knee into the forearm away from the stretch, 10 seconds. And we're gonna take a deep breath in and relax and twist and move a bit deeper into the stretch. So remember, you can use the arm as a guide to feel yourself moving into rotation in the upper back. And we're going to do that one more time. So we're going to contract. Really, really driving this knee into my elbow forearm. Drive, drive, drive. 3, 2, 1. Relax. Pull a little bit deeper. Twist a little bit more. And slowly come out of that stretch. Good job, guys. So now we're going to move to a semi-prone lying position. And I'm going to use my blocks here. So just to show you, I have one that just keeps my neck in a neutral position. And we're doing side lying rotation work here. So my head is going to be on a block, just keeps me in a nice neutral position. And my knee, so I'm coming into the block with my knee, and this creates a rotation for me, right? Just this stretch anyway. But the block as a mechanism for feedback as we move deeper into rotation. So the first thing we're going to do is actually just hold this stretch. So I'm going to reach the arm away. And in doing so, though, what I want you to do is firmly push this knee into the block. And I'm looking away. I'm reaching my arm away. And I'm keeping my knee. It's not like I'm pushing into the block at a max force, but I'm just keeping it there so there's feedback. So I'm not allowing myself to necessarily go deeper unless my knee stays on the block. So you can bring your arm to the knee now and just move a little bit deeper passively into the stretch. And we're just keeping it on that block for feedback. That's not moving too far in and out of the range. Good. So we'll do that on the other side now. So you just got to flip over the other way and find the same setup. So my head's positioned so it feels comfortable and neutral. And I'm going to reach across and that alignment there, so my knee should feel like it's aligned with the hip. The more flexion I get at the hip here, the little bit deeper I can get into the stretch, but stay comfortable. If you have to move the knee down a little bit more, that's okay. I'm actually way looser on this side. That's something to pay attention to, right? Like, I am tighter today. I spent a hard week in the gym doing some different things, and yeah, I definitely just slide into rotation on this side. My other side took a little bit to loosen up, so it's important to pay attention to those things. Good. And slowly come out of that position, so you basically come back to that semi-prone position first before sitting up. So what we're going to do is actually, it's optional if you have it. Like I did mention, if you have the weight, it's optional. But I find for me, especially, the weight just kind of helps me stay more open in this range. So what we're going to do is get back into side lying rotation. And we're going to take our arm above our head and move into that stretch that we were in through that rotation overhead. So now we're getting more T-spine rotation in the picture, and we're doing it more actively in and out of that range we just opened up. So I have it's like a 3-pound weight. It's like super light, but it just gives me that extra little bit of feedback. And the goal being, so can you see me all right here? See everything? The goal being, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to keep my knee flat down on the block. You see I'm reaching up and around, almost like that around the world movement that we started with, and then back around, and then back. So nice and slow. So big horseshoe movement. What we can add to this as well is rotation of the rotator cuff. So if my palm is facing down right now, internally rotated, I'm going to externally rotate the dumbbell up overhead and then bring it back around so my palm is facing down again. If you want to hold your knee down against the block, you can. If you want to challenge yourself a little bit more, you can do it without holding the knee down, so it causes you to actively pull that knee down and reach up, rotate around and back. Just adjusting my earphone here, fell out. Let's do two more. Reach up, around, rotate, internally rotate the rotator cuff, internally rotate, come back around. Good. It's actually good with or without the weight, right? You don't need weight to really feel that, especially if you have the yoga block set up so that it's really forcing you to stay tight with your technique on the blocks. Moving to the other side now. So find that rotation, find a position, it feels like you can move in and out of that range comfortably, nothing's in your way. And this is another way to do it. You see how my arm is aligned. So basically this is how I want my arm to finish on the other side. So my bottom arm is keeping that alignment for me. Down and around. So very nice movement to open up the T-spine rotation. Also opening up the shoulders and pecs, which play a large role in that as well. Back around. Just moving through 5 reps here. Another good cue to give yourself is when I come into the full stretch, this arm is pushing down into the ground. I'm keeping that active tension throughout. I really needed this today. Feels great. Last one. Reach, reach, reach around, internally rotate, externally rotate, come back around. Very good. All right, take your time coming out of that position. Hopefully everyone's hanging in there all right. So what we're going to look to do now is we're getting into a bit more of a twist here. So it's kind of like that seated twist, but I'm going to use gravity and just in my body weight and bring it a bit deeper. So the setup is similar to piriformis stretch in that I'm going to bring, so I'll do this side first so you guys can see the reach. Bring myself into a nice square piriformis stretch position. So if I come from 90-90 and then twist and move into piriformis, even hip capsule is probably all right too. Like if you're tight in piriformis and you want to do like a hip capsule stretch, so basically just find that 90-90, reach through across, so we're going into a twist. And what I'm actually doing here is I'm going to thread the needle away to the other side. And you're going to just put as much weight as you can bear on that and hold that stretch. Can you see that position all right, Jeff? Does that look like you can see what I'm doing there?
Yeah, looks fine.
Okay. So straighten this back leg as much as you can. Twist and thread the needle through and try to bring your chest towards the floor. We're looking to hold this stretch and sink deeper into the stretch. No contractions. So just find a range that feels comfortable and find your breath and slowly move deeper, threading the needle further and further and moving down towards the floor. The more strict you are on your setup for a piriformis stretch, the more intense this stretch would be. I'm in more of like a relaxed hip capsule type position, so I can really just be comfortable. Feel yourself relax deeper into the stretch. We got 10 more seconds. Just hold them for a minute. And then unthread the needle to come out. And position yourself to go to the other side. So I'm just gonna rotate, swivel my hips around. Maybe a little bit more strict on this side so you can see, like if I move into a strong 90-90 position and then thread the needle. So it's much more intense, like this side, like I'm getting into that piriformis stretch. It's much more intense, but if I move into more of a hip capsule type position, it's gonna allow me to emphasize my upper back a little bit more. So threading the needle away from the stretch. And my eyesight should be to the floor. So I want to feel like that arm is still reaching, but I'm bringing myself square. I like to sometimes also just play around with like switching sides just to kind of see. But I mean, not altering the stretch too much, but it is about experimenting with what you're feeling. And 10 more seconds. And unthread the needle, slowly come out of that position. How are we looking for time, Jeff?
Got 15 minutes.
15? Yeah, that's pretty good actually for just spine focused work. I did want to finish with just like some basic cobra and seated pike. This will just kind of allow us to cool down more than anything. So let's just move into that now. So I guess it's like a little bit of a cool down, just focusing on the breath, and then we can open up some time for some Q&A if you have any questions about your training week ahead, any of the things that we just did, maybe just spine in particular. So what we're going to do is just come down to the floor and kind of like a half cobra or the sphinx, is that what they call it? I don't know. But forearms are flat on the ground. We're bracing the ground here, and we're looking to find as much extension as possible and pressing the forearms into the ground and lifting my chest up and my head up, and we're holding that position. So this is very regressive to a lot of the things we were just doing, and it's a good opportunity to just reconnect with your breath and reconnect with the intent of the practice.
Sphinx works, Lucas. You look very sphinx-like.
Yeah, whatever this looks like, call it that. Biker dude stuck on the floor. All right. I think my jokes are a bit flat today.
Oh, yeah. I'm laughing over here.
All right. Okay, so we're going to roll to the side, come out of that position, and we're going to do our seated pike. But seated pike is actually kind of like a variation of elephant walk on the floor. So I'm going to go into fold. I'm folding on the floor. And what I want us to do is basically just move in and out of a straight leg and bent leg. So It's like elephant walk on the floor, if you're familiar with that stretch. So as I'm bending my left leg, I'm finding a little more range, deeper focus to one side and then the other. And then we'll just actually close off with a full seated pike hold. And I am holding my heels here, or if there's something like you can hold onto the calves, and I'm gonna just leverage myself. What I like to do here, like what's really good about that bent leg action is you can pull the femurs into the sockets. Really, like if you can grab those heels, you can really pull the femur into the socket. Ensure that your hips are set, and then you're gonna breathe out and come down and fold forward as deep as you can. So bilaterally now, so both legs are straight as you can. Should feel more isolated through the hamstrings. Ensure you're not leading with your head. That if anything, it would be the chest that pulls you down deeper. Chest moves forward. I can articulate this position by, you can see there's movement here. It's an action of my ribs pulling upward, just to feel, floss the hamstrings a bit more, release some of that neural tension. And come on in. Whew. So that was a little spine series. Different twist on some of the things that we've already done. And then a couple of little things there that you can apply to the toolbox of movements. And we can open up some time for some Q&A, or if there's any questions about that spine or your own training regime now. I mean, is that good? Thumbs up, guys. Everyone feeling all right? Spine is opened up, breathing better. I like doing that T-spine work when I get my upper back like more opened up. I can feel like I can actually breathe better. So yeah, those are some of my favorites. I like to do those a little more often. Anyone have, you can unmute if you want, or you can chuck a question in the chat box, or.
That was so amazing.
Yeah, good. Much needed.
Yeah.
Spinal Sundays.
Yeah, it was amazing. I think it's yeah, a lot of the stretches, like even the piriformis was so much better today. So I think a lot of the exercises, you know, it sort of released a lot of neural tension that I was carrying throughout the whole body. So I just feel amazing.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, that spine focused work is like, it's almost like more, Jeff, you said this the other day too, we were chatting with him, like you feel like almost like that emotional release when you do like a really good spine session or bridge session.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I have one question relating to that initial sort of round the world. Sorry, I'll jump in there now. The one where we were standing in sort of the standing pancake, and we did the arms overhead. Just when you go to the side, is your chest sort of supposed to face the side that you're going to, or are you sort of twisting your body around to face the front again at that point in time? I couldn't quite. You
could play with that. Like I could have, again, and this is like what you'll end up doing too if you're, you know, doing exercises for a long time is yeah, when I'm in this position here, the intent for what we did today was to come up and stay in that rotated position and rotate at the top. But I could have rotated everyone at the bottom, and we could have been in that lateral flex, and then we could have came up that way as well too. Yeah. So it's just about, you know, I knew I was going into lateral flexion after that, so I wanted to just kind of open and breathe through those ranges and build that intent around that lateral flexion. Yeah, you could do both.
Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
for sure.
I've got just with regards to programming range of strength sprints
Yeah.
before and after like heavy deadlift sessions and stuff. I know the theory around it's changing. Try to fit in whenever I can. Do you typically do like a head to toe range sprint thing? Could you do it right after a session, before deadlift session, that kind of thing, like timing wise, or later on in the day? What do you think is the best, or is it individualized?
I like to keep my strength work, Jeff would agree too, pretty separate from like deep, aggressive range work. So yeah, I wouldn't do head to toe right before heavy dead work. Or, I would probably try to get it a little further apart. In terms of like how far apart, could be 8 to 12 hours apart. If it's like built in, I'd have to see like the whole program, but yeah, doing it at the end of a session is another great way to do it as well too, right? So if I've done deadlifts, if I've done a focused strength session, and we talked about this the other day, Jeff, like doing middle split work after squat, it's like, well, yeah, it makes sense because squatting is like horse stance, right? So I think that way when it comes to hinging patterns, trunk movements, it relates a lot to head to toe movement. So there's a couple ways to do it, but I wouldn't do head to toe aggressively before, my work like that. Like that's, if you were especially going for head to toe.
Yeah, I agree. Head to toe is a very demanding sort of flexibility with the intent, obviously, to really push the boundaries of hamstring flexibility. Neurologically, it's pretty demanding, so doing it before deadlifts would probably be a really bad idea. Now, you might see success after because your hamstrings are going to be so fatigued that you don't have a lot of that tension, like I guess through the hamstrings. A lot of people have to get through fighting the tension that's already kind of within their body, right? And when your muscles are fatigued, that's why, for instance, when you stretch for like 3 minutes, it's a lot easier later in the set to relax and things like that, as the stretch reflex is just too exhausted to fight back. So you could have that effect possibly if you did it right after, deadlifts. For really pushing range of motion, you want to try to, outside of very specific circumstances, you want to save it either right after a strength session or later, maybe in the evening. But even for me, when I did head to toe, I couldn't do it at nighttime before I went to sleep because the style of stretching is so neurologically demanding that it would just, I'd be on edge for hours afterwards. I wouldn't be able to sleep. So it was like it's exhausting. It's exhausting, but it's the same thing. Like I wouldn't deadlift if I go to sleep. I wouldn't do head to toe either. It's just a different style of stretching, and the intensity is so high that it has a similar training effect as to like maximal strength work. So, before deadlifts though, you could definitely stretch hip flexors or something like that. If you feel like hip flexor stretching between sets or something, or even after or before or whatever. But hamstrings, I would not.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Just
And that head to toe protocol I introduced you guys to is like not the full blown kind of ordeal. So it's just a very soft introduction, like just basically like neurally stretching that elevated foot with some Jefferson curls and trying to establish basically some learning there. So if you did want to go head to toe and you were like, I really want to nail this and get like really good at this, then that would probably be a whole different structure. Like when Jeff and I did it, it was like we like screwed off on leg training for a little bit.
Right. That's all I did. I didn't do any leg training. I just did it. So there was no way I could have done leg training with true head to toe training.
3 sets of 72 reps.
Yeah, you want to vomit. Not to push anyone away from head to toe training, but prepare to vomit every day because you just like, you're not actually going to, but it's crazy. The response that elicits in your body is so much rejection coming from just your brain, and your body doesn't, like, even this week I've been playing with getting back to it, and like every time I do it, I just want to throw up. It's a disgusting feeling. It's disgusting. But it's one of those things that, like, if you can do it, you can do anything. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah,
mentally, it's just
nothing's unlocked my hamstrings like that.
Nah.
No.
Cool. That's awesome. That was actually my second question too, is how intense should the head to toe feel like you're ripping apart your tendons? I feel like I can take it, but there's a nausea feeling. There's there's just a shiver feeling that comes right over me. And I guess that was my question. So
yeah, we could probably chat more offline. We can chat more offline about like how you should structure if you want to go for it. But yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things. You want to have a good base of flexibility first. I mean, I had already had splits and stuff by the time I went for it.
Yeah.
A few other people have taken the opposite approach of like kind of using it to really finish off their splits, but I already had them, and then when I did it, splits were literally like I could wake up in the morning and just roll in. It wasn't an issue. But yeah, per Emmett's recommendation, and something I follow too, is there needs to be a really good base of eccentric hamstring strength there. That's my honest opinion. And anyone who doesn't have that is running into trouble. For instance, Ito's protocols for head to toe, tons of people have messed up their hamstrings on it. But the requirement for the eccentric strength that Emmett basically kind of laid out wasn't there. So you have tons of people with little to no experience stretching or even strength in their hamstrings, and then they're going for head to toe. And the volume is actually a lot more than Emmett's too. So it's just kind of a disaster. But yeah, we can talk about that in separate. That's very specific, but yeah.
One question I have. So it seems like as I've gone through today's session, it seems like I have pretty good capabilities when we're working on some of those earlier movements that seem to be a little bit more isolated to a specific area. But the challenge I run into is like once things start to get integrated, like for example, when we did the piriformis with the thread the needle, and then also like just doing a seated pike, it seems to not really, it seems very difficult for me. So is that something that you've seen maybe often with people where like, I think my T-spine mobility is pretty good. I know that hip mobility is a limitation for me, but do you see that being fairly common? And if so, like what's the best way to address it that you found?
Ooh, I like this question. Go ahead, Lucas. Why don't you start with it? And
Well, stretching is a skill, number one. And that's like, this is where you'll start to realize that when you start combining movements. It's like, okay, now like we combined piriformis with some shoulder capsule work today, and that requires a little more coaching. So, we had some coach's eye here for Jeff, but maybe, a little more in depth offline, or just, looking at contractions and breathing, what you're feeling and how you're positioned. It is one of those things you have to keep pulling those cues out like throughout the whole set. So yeah, it does become more of a skill when we get deeper into combining positions. So it is very common to have that disconnect, and even, side split, getting into like deeper things like side split, it's like very skilled in that that's the thing. The disconnect with like real deep range work is that, it's not the process of just holding a stretch. It's the process of holding the technique, right? So hips staying the same, cues in the position staying the same throughout the duration of the stretch, rather than just holding a stretch. So you can hold a stretch and you're getting into isolated stretches and you're like, oh, I can hold this nicely, I can feel this. And then when we start adding more to it, that's when it's like, okay, we have to go deeper into that skill side of it.
Yeah, the question too is exactly why I don't subscribe to the FRC system. I do not believe from practice and experience with other people that open chain isolated movements have a direct carryover to anything else. I think it's a skill you develop in itself that's separate of the entire body. Yes, I do agree. Obviously, all the individual parts need to work. But with that being said, just because an individual part works well does not mean you can tie it into the chain and get the whole system to work together as one unit simply because one piece works. You know,
Right.
You have the tires on your car are great, but there's so many other things involved in propelling that car forward other than just how great your tires are, right? So the body's the same way. Yes, it is a good skill to develop the individual mechanics of the joint separately from the system itself, but there's a lot of really great movers and athletes who are really great at moving their body, but can't isolate every little movement down to each joint. But when it comes to executing the movement they need to execute, they have no problem doing it. So the open chain flexibility method of like joint rotation in space, like not connected to everything else, does not directly carry over. There's no direct carryover, and there's tons of people that have not only came to that same conclusion, but this is why, like if you do cars every day, you're going to get good at doing cars. You're not going to get, it's not going to open up everything else for you magically. That's just not how it works. So it's not that I think anything's wrong with it. I don't subscribe to, for the simple fact that what you just said right now, right? So if you feel like you can move this shoulder really well, but then you go to throw, and then maybe your hip and that whole shoulder, and it just like doesn't feel as good. Well,
Yeah.
Okay, where's the crossover, right? Like fascially, everything is connected from top to bottom, and in so many ways we can't even really understand, right? Like, that's the honest truth. Like, yeah, we can cut people open and say, well, this connects to this and blah, blah, blah. But even just the neurological aspect and the nerves and all these, like, there's so much involved that, that it's not just like an A equals A type of situation, right? So like get individual joints working better, but don't expect it to carry over into, to something what you're trying to use kind of that whole chain or more muscles involved, right? Because the arch of the foot does connect to the big toe, does connect to the tibialis, does connect to the hip, connects to the lat, connects to the shoulder, connects to the jaw. Like it's all connected. So
Yeah.
It's the same reason that you see Charles Poliquin 10 years ago, like rub somebody's jaw, and all of a sudden their hamstring has more flexibility. I mean, it's just like, it's a magic trick simply because like, yeah, the system's connected, right? So, but if you just get really good at moving your jaw around in circles and up and down, your hamstrings aren't like, you're not going to have a front split. You know what I mean? So, but I'm glad you asked that question because a lot of people have kind of had that experience where I like do cars all the time, but it doesn't really seem to piece together in the entire system. And again, like, look at Chinese weightlifters, like they can round their spines, they can extend their spines, they train side bending, they train all these different variations, but I bet you would fail Dr. Spina's CARS test if you try to get them to like move their spine and isolate every individual. Again, it's not that I don't think it's important, just it's not, I don't think it's as important in terms of like its carryover to doing these other movements, if that makes sense, if I'm saying that correctly. So,
Yeah.
If you haven't, like for me, for instance, like if I stretch, there's usually a correlation there, right? So like my hip, okay, I go to stretch, my hip's a little tight, and then I also maybe can't move my hip as well for the simple fact, one, it doesn't have as much flexibility or there's more tension or whatever. But if I just start moving my hip around in circles, it's just going to get good at moving around in circles. But is that going to carry over into my squat? Is that going to carry over into my split? Is it going to, it could, it couldn't. It's a real hard, it's not, it's not like exactly that. And that's what you just experienced. So I'm glad you did ask that. You kind of have to work on both, but that's kind of what Lucas and I try to, what's going to give you the biggest bang for your buck, right?
Yeah.
Like if you have extra time to do all those things, then fine. But most people don't. Honestly, most people don't want to. So, yeah. So just think with that kind of going forward is you might find that in isolation things work better, but then when you try to involve it into the entire chain, it doesn't exactly translate 100%. So
That's reminds me of Kerr's side split test.
Yeah.
Like I don't like that because
no, it's terrible.
If you just like put your foot up on a chair, if you can put your foot up on a chair, you can do side split. Well, how many people message you and say, I can't do that, Jeff. I can't. So that means I can't do a side split. It's like, no, it's about, not isolation, because it is a skill. It's a bilateral skill. You need to know how to squat properly and how to set your hips and open your, so it's, again, it's one of those things where isolation is one aspect and it's important, but stretching, like getting into big positions and learning, how to take your range to the next level, it is a skill. You have to dive deep in understanding, and you have to understand what your body's going to respond to as well too.
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting conversation because I simply find that just getting more flexible and getting stronger and using these different ranges and training these different, whatever you want to call them, flexion, extension, blah, 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 blah. You just kind of become better at doing that without directly doing that. And for most people, like, the goal is to open up the line of tissue, both neurologically and from a metabolic level, so that you have more options so the brain, like, that's the thing, is the brain makes decisions so fast with feedback, way faster than you'd ever, I mean, you are not going to have control over that in certain situations. When you throw a baseball, it's not like you're literally controlling how you rotate your elbow and your wrist. You're just doing it. You're just going to throw it, and the body's going to go, okay, I got to do whatever I got to do to execute this task. Obviously, the more options you have, the better. But you are not under control of them. Like, as much as you want to think you are, you're not. So cars, like having that awareness of the joints and space and whatever. Okay, cool. It's nothing wrong with it, but it's not going to translate to you throwing, or it may not translate to your overhead squat. Like, there's tons of guys that have good position and can get into an overhead squat, but then if you ask them to isolate shoulder flexion separate of that, it's like they don't really know what's going on. Again, that's a separate conversation, but it just shows that it's not like an exact translation. So, I mean, that's pretty much, I don't know, I could go on, but I hope that answers your question. So work on both, have a little bit of both in your training.
Yeah. Well, and so like the program that you have on ATG, like that, you'd say that's pretty all-encompassing in the sense of it getting those big global movements. And I guess that's what I've experienced too, is like most of the stretches in the preparatory range series is pretty, like, it addresses kind of the whole chain. And so just doing like more of those bigger movements is probably going to be more valuable. That makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, you still have to respect the set principle. Like, if we know one thing, it's like the more we do a certain thing, and the better we get at it, right? So, like, I find that a lot of people who try to develop flexibility spend a lot of time doing a lot of different things other than their splits. But there's also, like, you can't, like, if I just told everyone to just start training front split and only trying to train front split that way, they're not going to see a lot of progress either. So the way Range of Strength is kind of designed is, you have that A series to kind of go bit by bit, work through, and then boom, work on your split. Whereas I've seen other stretch programs where you just literally do many variations of hamstring stretching and whatever, blah, 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 blah. And then you may work a minute on your front split, and that's it. Like, so, Range of Strength, I try to incorporate everything. I mean, it has wrist, neck, all the little nuances and like little things that most people are going to miss out on, which again are super important, because tension through there's the neck work and bridge, for instance. Tension through that trap and the upper neck and the back and all these, like, it will affect your bridge position. So train it as such, but also do the bridge, because then the bridge will tie that into whatever. The problem with FRC is that they, like, to a lot of, not all practitioners, because I won't say all of them. I have a good friend here locally in Tampa who is like one of the only guys I would really listen to, because FRC is like anything else. It's a weekend certification. So just because somebody's spouting FRC doesn't mean what they're doing fucking works. But, if you're not doing cars, if you don't have perfect cars range of motion, you shouldn't be doing X. Like, that's bullshit. That is bullshit. It's the wrist, like, that's another one. Like, when I sat in a seminar, Spina's like, if you don't have active 90-degree wrist flexion, you should never do a handstand. Yet tons of hand balancers don't have it. Tons of hand balancers don't have elbow pain, shoulder pain, wrist pain. Yet they don't have 90-degree active wrist flexion. So it's like, it's kind of bullshit. Like just from a practical standpoint, it's just full of shit. I can find so many different people who can't display these things like in a open chain environment, but they can use it and utilize it very easily in a closed chain system. So it's that, you know, it doesn't, again, it's not exact. A lot of great squatters suck at pistol squats. You know, but a lot of I have tons of guys that have got great pistol squats, but they can't fucking squat. So it's like, you know, what are you trying to do? You know what I mean? Like, cool, you can hold a fucking 80-kilo kettlebell and you can squat down on one leg, but you put a barbell on their back and all shit, you know, it's just like hits the fan. It's just like, what are you doing? It doesn't look, so again, it's important. I'm also the kind of guy that, like, I don't believe like split squats make you better at split squats. Yes, they obviously can help you have a better squat, but if you want to be a good squatter, you're going to have to squat. I will always live by that. It's just the way it is. You know, cars aren't going to get you your front splits. Front splits are going to get you your front splits.
Yeah.
And then address those individual pieces along the way if you find limitations. And that's what flexibility will offer you. I'm sure you went through the routine today and you're like, oh man, like this left trap was a little tighter than, like, you are going to be your biggest assessment tool.
Yeah.
Nothing Lucas and I or your chiro or your PT or a trainer or anybody is going to be able to assess you better than you are, as long as you have the training IQ to understand what it is that you're experiencing in your body, right? So, you know, anytime I go get a massage, which is very rare, but if I do, I can talk her through what I'm experiencing, and that helps the situation because she's not just going in there like fucking with the lights off and trying to shoot in the dark, right? Like, she can do what she does because I have good information about what's going on in my body. Again, like, you'll go through a lot of these routines and you're going to experience, it can change even day to day, week to week or whatever. So, yeah. So kind of work both, but you're right. You're on the path. Like, you understand kind of, that's how range of strength is designed, and Lucas does it the same way, right? Like, because it's what works. It's what works. So hopefully that answered actually a lot of people. I don't know. I'm sure a lot of people have had that kind of question, but they don't really know how to ask it, or, but it's actually one of the best questions I've been asked.
It's like the best way to make your flexibility training a discipline is when you surround them around big positions. You know, if you are starting out and you're doing a side split position, you're getting better and more flexible and increasing your range of strength in those areas that demonstrate a side split position. And that's that idea of, like, it's squat day, I'm going to train my lower body and I'm going to do these other movements to make my squat better. That's just the idea behind range of strength. It's like, it's side split day, so I'm working my adductors, my piriformis, my horse stance. Like, so it's like the idea of, like, making it a discipline. Like, instead of just saying, I'm going to go stretch, I go, why are you stretching? What are you doing? What's the goal? What's the discipline? Like, how are we getting better? So that's the idea, right? I'm going to go do BJJ. So I'm going to go do those things that make me better at that, right? So it's the mindset you need to have if you want to build that buy-in for why you're doing it. That's just the way we are as humans. Like, why do we do anything? Right? It's like,
yeah, it's the same as, like, for instance, you know, when you're doing, let's say, a split squat and the back foot, the toes bend, hopefully, as you do a split squat. But then when you go to isolate your toes, you may not be able to extend the toes. So part of it is like, okay, well, your toes have the capability to do it. Now, can you control it in an open chain environment? Maybe not. Could it be beneficial to you? Sure. But do they do what they need to do when they need to do it? For most people, yes, especially in a closed chain system, right? So, like, is it a good thing to maybe work on the awareness of your toes? Of course, yeah. Like, no one's going to argue that, but don't think that is going to, like, translate into, oh, it makes my split squat better. Like, no. I mean, no. Honestly, it's not going to. But it's going to make you really good at moving your toes. Again, like, the adaptation imposes the demand, and it has to be specific to whatever you're trying to accomplish, right? That we know. No matter, we can argue biological science all day, but that we know to be true. So, you know, but from from like a structural balance point of view and things like this, now we have to maybe implement different concepts, right? Like a lot of good bench pressers have shoulder pain. So I mean, that's like where we would get into, okay, different variations, fly, like, is it gonna directly help your bench press? You know, but will the soft tissue open up? Will you stress the same line of tissue less? Will that help improve your bench press? Yeah, probably. You know what I mean? So, and that's usually what you see is like a lot of these people like, oh yeah, I did cars for a year and my deadlift went up. Well, you just were fucked up, and you couldn't like you couldn't actually exhibit your full, like you couldn't utilize your body in full because you were messed up. Like they didn't make you stronger like at deadlift. You probably already had that strength. You just literally couldn't use it. You couldn't access it because, you know, whether your body sensed pain and it kind of backs off, you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of these things that your body does kind of that you don't have control over. Like it's, you know, you fall off your bike and you hit your shoulder on the sidewalk, like every muscle in your shoulder tenses up around and it locks down on that joint. You don't have control over that. You have control over it going forward and like handling it, but the body's gonna do what it needs to do to protect itself and to execute a certain pattern. You know what I mean? Like, and again, I could rant on about this, but like the FRC guys have been on fucking cars for 7 years, suck at doing cars. Like there were people in that room that were better at doing cars than they were, yet they do it day in and day out, all day long, all the time. And they don't do anything else because they think it's the answer to everything. And it's just not. It's just not. It should drive me fucking crazy. Sorry. I think the principles are great. And again, I've worked with practitioners who use it really well, but they see the big picture.
The big picture for sure.
That would be my experience with FRC as well. I have attended a certification, and I mean, after that point, I worked on cars for quite a while, and again, once the integration, the need to integrate came, it, you know, didn't really translate well.
Can make those connections. Yeah, you're like you're starting over.
Like if you took a wrestler who did cars for a year and you took a wrestler who got really fucking good at deadlifting and you know, let's say cross-bench pullover or some crazy, like, and just got fucking strong, like I'm gonna put my money on the guy who got fucking strong every single time. I'm not gonna put my money on the guy who is better at cars. Like I'm not. Just like, I'm sorry. The guy's he's gonna whoop his ass. Like, you know, and this is what we saw with Conor McGregor and Ito. It's not that movement culture is great. It's the fact that he got away from his fucking sport and then he started doing something else, which maybe could have some benefits on your movement, but you didn't spend as much time boxing, you didn't spend as much time kicking, you didn't spend as much time doing the things that you need to do for your sport. So then you go and get your ass kicked by a guy who literally breathes and lives and sleeps and eats jiu-jitsu, and he fucking rocked his world. You know what I mean? So, you know, that, and again, that's why I like Emmett's approach to flexibility, and it's why I model a lot, and Lucas a lot what we do. Obviously, we, you know, have a close relationship with Emmett. For instance, long lunge. You can start working on your split squat no matter what level, or your split, no matter what level your flexibility is, but you have to start getting very specific. It doesn't mean all these other things won't be beneficial. It just means that whatever you're trying to accomplish. And again, like Lucas said, you know, putting one leg up on a chair tells a completely different story than the fascial lines and the connections of both legs. You know, a front split. A lot of people have a great pike. A lot of people have good quad flexibility, but they spend no time in a front split, so they can't display a front split because it's just, it's so different. It's just a totally different experience. So you have to have both. But, you know, and spine obviously
you guys
and everything. So.
You guys think of like a protocol you'd like to see next week? Is there a specific protocol you're thinking of, like?
Can I vote for middle splits?
Middle splits?
Yeah. Middle splits.
Yeah, let's do it.
I'm not laughing at you, I'm laughing at me.
Hey guys, I've got a quick question, just regarding cold flexibility versus warm. And I hear you guys talk about that a lot. I just feel like personally, and a couple people I know, the difference between the two is so drastic and dramatic. Is there anything specifically to work on that, or is that just over time? What are your thoughts on that?
I've actually talked about this a lot recently. It's been, I don't know, sometimes there's like a buzz around what you can do cold, but I mean, I'm not like a big proponent of like demonstrating cold flexibility. Like anything you want to do well, you're going to do well warming up. Like if you're going to go hit a baseball, you're going to warm up your swing and hit the baseball. It's not necessarily always like a measurement of like hitting a home run cold kind of thing. So what I like to say though is, instead of thinking about what you can do cold, think about what you can do with less warm up or less preparation. So a good example of that is always the standing pike. Okay, I wake up in the morning, I can do a bit of an elephant walk and I can touch the floor. Maybe it was a 60-second elephant walk. Next time, 30 seconds, I can touch the floor. That to me is more of a measurement of cold, or I guess accessible. I would rather call it accessible range that you can like access quickly. Like, yeah, so people do get really buzzy around cold flexibility or ranges that you can demonstrate cold, but I've never measured my flexibility like that. I've always measured it more so like, oh, I can get into my pancake very quickly now. Like I know I could sit down here right now and cold, it would take me 10, 15 seconds, I could pancake. So, I mean, that's a cool perspective. And I think that that's better to think of it that way than to always be looking for cold range, because cold range is never going to be your best range, but, and it's not always going to be the range you want to, measure. Right. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on that, Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't think it's a very good measurement either. Otherwise everyone would we'd go to the baseball field, and as soon as everyone walked inside down, we'd start the game. There'd be no warm-ups or, like people would play chess warm-up, you know what I mean? So it gets better. It just gets better over time. Like, for instance, when I got head to toe, it's just easy for me to think with because it's fried into my brain at this point. But it was 4 or 6 weeks before I got head to toe, but it was another 4 or 6 months before I could do it cold. But even still, my warm head to toe was like chin to toe or whatever, you know what I mean? So there's always going to be a difference. As the collagen warms up and the body becomes more elastic, you're going to display more ranges. Unless you sleep in a heater, it's just the way it's always going to be, and it will improve. The other thing you have to think about is range. Just like strength requires energy. It's, the body wants to remain as efficient as possible. So, a lot of people do, when they say cold, it's like, can I get out of bed and do it? Like, you just spent your night in one position, hopefully for 8 or 9 hours. Like, you're not going to display the same range that you're going to have after you've walked around all day and done God knows what with your body. You're just not going to. With that being said, I think there is a neurological tolerance for tension. And I think as you develop the skill to just become more relaxed and soft, kind of as Kit describes it, your cold will improve with your warm. It will become a lot closer. Yes, I have seen people where it's like a huge difference. And then I've seen people where it's a slight difference. You know what I mean? I think that slight difference comes with time, it comes with experience, but it also comes with lifestyle considerations and factors and things like that. If you're like if you're in your house, your kids are screaming all day and shit, like you're gonna be tense until you stretch, and then you're gonna be relaxed. And then the next morning, the kid wakes you up bouncing on top of your head. Not that I have experience with this or anything, but you're gonna be all like tensed up again. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like you're fighting that battle, going back and forth. But again, it's one of those things that like it could change week to week, day to day. I mean, yes, I did get to the point where I could literally get out of bed and touch my head and my toe, but I also had like chin to toe. But part of the protocol also for head to toe, and this is interesting, was when you do the reel system, you get out of bed. It's an optional thing, but I did it because I'm crazy. You get out of bed and you do 36 reps every single morning. First thing before you brush your teeth, before you take water, like literally first thing. So again, to me, it kind of goes back to that SAID principle. You kind of develop that cold flexibility, because that's what you wake up with the intention to do every day, is like, shit, I'm gonna do this cold. So then I just got better at it. But whether it did anything other than that, I mean, it definitely made it a lot easier and more tolerable later in the evening when I actually finished the routine off as prescribed, for sure. Like, I could tell the difference in those days. But but it's interesting because we were just talking to Emmett about cold therapy and flexibility, and he kind of had some interesting insight that I wasn't really expecting. Lucas asked him, where he said that cold can actually have a short-term effect on improving the flexibility. And I guess the conclusion we kind of came to was it just kind of dampens the nerves. Like, you can't really experience like the feeling of, it's just numb. It gets kind of that numb. So it kind of bypasses it, but then you lose it as soon as that effect wears off. Yeah. So, but we know from a heat standpoint, as the body heats up, the soft tissue does become more elastic. So that's like, it's not a nervous system trick. It's an actual like metabolic effect that occurs. So they are different.
Yeah, I think just think of it more as like, how quickly can you access your new range?
Yeah.
Instead of cold. It's like, because that's a better recommendation, is like, okay, it took me 5 minutes to get into deep pike. Now it takes me a minute, right? And yeah, you can play with those things, but I think that's a better way to.
That's what Kit talked about in the podcast too, was, how long should you stretch? His system is very much, he's not a sets and reps kind of guy. But we find that because it takes people a long time to relax, to like truly relax into a stretch, whereas Kit's been doing this for maybe twice as long as I've been alive, probably. So he just has like dancers that say, like, it's a skill. You're gonna develop the ability to access it faster, just like Lucas said. So yeah, you will actually have to spend less time, because you're gonna be able to just get into the range you need to get into, relax in it. Whereas beginners, like, man, 3 minutes is trying to get you just to relax and breathe. You know what I mean? So we're not even getting into the good stuff yet. We're trying to like bypass habits and all these other things. So that's kind of the other. It's a very interesting conversation.
Yeah, because cold range doesn't necessarily mean that you're more flexible, but maybe it means that you can lock in to the mindset and to what the feeling is that you're about to feel. It's just like you're more experienced, right? So yeah, it doesn't necessarily mean that you didn't have that range before, but now you're experienced and you know how to relax quicker, and you know how to you know what you're about to expect. So it's definitely a discussion.
Yeah, I 100% believe it's more neurological aspect than anything, for sure. Like,
yeah,
100%.
Cool. So we're gonna figure out something for next week then.
I think they said side split. Oh, joy.
Yeah, sweet.
So if you guys ain't on the July kickoff, start it, man. It's pretty brutal, but it's fun, and we're getting a ton of, I'm sure Lucas is getting messages. I know Emmett has, and I have. Like, I had a guy access his Pancake this week, and he's had so much trouble with it. So it's just kind of a cool challenge to see what kind of benefits it offers everybody, and see what you can do with it. So if you guys are doing it yet, join in on the fun.
We'll try to share that out when it's done too, like we did before.
Yeah, we'll do a PDF like the hang challenge.
Yeah.
Other than that, guys, you guys have a great week. And we'll see you next Sunday, 12 o'clock. See you guys.
See you guys.